clarity about shame, and then we'll get to clarity about respect. Shyness is shame. Shame, we might say, is a more extreme form than, maybe shyness is a very big category and shame is more specific. But when there is shame at the experience of fear, we call that shyness. And that's basically shame. We don't want to display fear. The masses are trained systematically to be ashamed of the experience of fear. The more ashamed the herd, the more easily manipulated and exploited they are. The easier it is to get them to perceive what is desired for them to perceive, to perform the behaviors and actions that are desired for them to perform, whether that's buying stocks or paying taxes or purchasing diamond rings. The more in a general hysteria and panic and shamed mode people are, the easier it is to lead them, the more efficiently they can be led. Basically, you could put it this way: the more chained they are, the more leashed they are, the less amount of effort it takes to move that. Say you have a dog, on a leash. Well, if the leash is a really weak leash, then it can take a lot of effort. If it's a leash, like, I don't know if you're familiar with the choke leashes, but there are leashes which the same amount of effort can produce much more pain in the dog, so it won't take much effort on the part of the dog trainer to actually produce compliance in the dog. So the more ashamed the herd, the more easily manipulated and exploited they are. Is this a problem? Is this something to protest, to end? Is this something to fix? Should we buy a hat to show our opinion on the matter? Say no to manipulation of the masses, or say no to mainstream media or mass media. Well, we could do that. In fact, it could become a new trend. They might even have it on TV where, act now. Everybody wants to have the hat that says, turn off your TV. Should we vote for the candidate who promises to save us from a culture of shame? Look, shame is in every human culture at some level. Shyness is programmed in. Conformity is programmed in. If you don't conform, you should be ashamed of not conforming. And you should be shy about expressing your any divergence between the official mythology and your own perception. You should be shy about expressing it. You should express it discreetly, if at all. That makes sense. It's responsible. It helps you survive well, minimize danger from potential threats like government soldiers. I had a girlfriend from Croatia, and she lived in a civil war in the 90s. And when she was talking about the war and seeing the foreign troops, those used to be part of her own country because Yugoslavia was all one big country, but then it broke up into Serbia and Croatia and these different portions. But she knew that those people were ethnically different from her, the approaching army. They spoke a different language. They had different religious background. I believe they were Muslim, and within her community, basically everybody was Christian or Greek Orthodox or something like that. So she knew that those were not friendly people. Those people, coming with the guns and the tanks and stuff, she was pretty clear they're not friendly. Even though officially they're part of the same country, she knew to be cautious about them. And she talked a little bit about being in the midst of a civil war and her disappointment at her own soldiers of the Croatian soldiers who I believe lost. In fact, they surrendered. So she was talking about, her expectation that they risk their lives and be more patriotic in the sense of Croatian patriotism or whatever. And I could be stating some of this wrong, but the basic idea was some of these soldiers said, well, we're outgunned. We're going to surrender, and we're going to be alive to promote the well-being of our families and our community rather than, you know, not be around and, you know, all the rest of y'all become the, you know, well, rather than the Serbians have their way with you, and you can interpret what I said any way you want. And I don't have any particular, you know, opinion as far as pro this or anti that, as far as any of the conflict in Bosnia, Herzegovina, Yugoslavia, any of that stuff. I'm not an expert on it. What I learned from her was really interesting to me because it was completely unlike anything I'd been exposed to in any, you know, public school or anything. This is like a human's actual story of actual, you know, conversations she had with soldiers. Her and other people went to the local military base and said, "Why aren't you soldiers out there forming a line in a defensive position as those tanks roll in? Why aren't you, you know, defending our city?" And they said, "We are not going to continue to resist. We're surrendering." I'm giving you the super short version. She was pretty pissed that this, you know, she and the other people were very pissed that the soldiers declined to defend the city, but that's ultimately how it went. So I consider shame and the cultures of shame and being aware of danger as something to respect. It could be fascinating. It could be relevant. It doesn't mean it is, but it could be. It could be a danger to accurately assess quickly if there is a culture of shame in your midst. It could be important, valuable to accurately assess who's ashamed, what are they ashamed of, what is appropriate to say publicly, and what is dangerous to say publicly. Who's trying to exploit shame? I think of the idea that if someone makes a criticism of certain political figure in the United States, they might be accused of racism. Just, you know, if they're not themselves of a certain ethnic background, and they make a criticism of a particular political figure, there's in some cases an automatic shaming of the criticism, because that person is clearly irrationally basing their criticism on race or something. I don't know that racial criticism is necessarily irrational. It's just maybe less rational. There went the plant. It's fake, don't worry. So who benefits from the public being shy, afraid, suppressed, easily being tamed and easily led, being complacent and compliant and easily, you know, diverted and distracted and influenced? Who benefits from your repression and your rejection of yourself? That's ultimately what, you know, this training is. It's the rejection of your emotions, rejection of your own intuition, your own critical thinking skills. The idea is there's a model to conform to, reject anything that doesn't fit with it, and display conformity. Now, one could say it's actually useful to know what the ideal is. You can display conformity to the ideal without necessarily limiting your perceptions to whatever the ideal, you know, whatever the popular mythology says is the only way. So clarity about respect. So I have nothing against diamonds or the diamond industry. I have nothing against, you know, the United States or the people who say, oh, if you criticize such and such political figure, you must be a racist. Well, that can be an effective way to intimidate someone. I am interested in assessing things for what they are, to respect things in their function and context, and, you know, what they're actually valuable for. So the diamond industry and what Edward Bernays did with the diamond industry is extremely profitable. I can respect that. Maybe they use deception, maybe they use confusion, fear, shame, and so on to further their commercial interests by selling diamonds for an enormous profit margin. I can respect that. by now, doesn't that remind you of institutions of governing, like government-regulated schools, government-regulated media? They use deception, confusion, fear, and shame to influence perception, behavior, and so on. That's what they do. So we've got private organizations doing that. We've got public institutions doing that. So what should we do about all of this respect and fear and shaming and shyness and the training of people to not be confident? Well, in order to prevent reverse psychology from ever having been used at all, we must all eventually go back in time and join together to universally forbid the universal sin of being a naive conformist. Almost everyone criticized the horrors of being a naive conformist, right? I mean, everyone at least should do that, right? So I had said I would add a little bit about confidence. Just want to restate. Confidence is the willingness to take action and be really precise about the results of the action. I'm really interested in the results. So I'm not necessarily interested in defending my method or defending my stated outcome. I'm just interested in the results. That's confidence. I'm just really interested in the results. That's confidence. That's kind of an interesting way. I didn't even know I was going to say it that way. But if I'm shy, I'm interested in defending my stated goals. Relaxed, I'm clear. I'm interested in these results, and I want to know what they are, and then I want to know which methods actually work to produce those results consistently and effectively. So if Edward Bernays was effective, well, might he be confident? Is Edward Bernays, would we expect him to be ashamed of his methods and the success of his methods, and that he kept getting hired by Lucky Strike and then by De Beers, and then maybe the U.S. government wants to hire him again, and then, oh, now the government of France, and now the Nazi Germany government, and everybody wants to hire him, and they want to, come and study with him? No, he's going to be, more and more confident the more success he gets. So there's degrees of confidence, but the basic thing of confidence is being really interested in the results that I produce, with a clear, interest in producing a certain result that I really sincerely and inspired to promote. I want to really promote a particular thing for myself, for my family, for my business, and I want to really be attentive to the actual results that I'm producing and which methods are producing which results. So it's an issue of being really, focused on precision, effectiveness. Makes me think of like engineers.